All right, the time is 7:32. Members present: Kim, Brandon, Dave, Don, and Charles. A quorum is present. The meeting was delayed by the start of the meeting was delayed by 2 minutes due to the computer clock glitching, um, and showing 7:29 for an extended period of time. Uh, First item on the agenda, the minutes from our meeting on 11/25. Are there any corrections that members present would like to offer to those minutes? Going once, going twice. The minutes from 11/25 are adopted as they were submitted by Sean. Next item on the agenda, Century and Allen, Century and County Highway Q, Century Allen Lake traffic signal upgrades, study intersection reconfiguration, and West Mendota Path preliminary designs 24-109. Sean, if you'd like to lead us off.
Sure. And we've got the design team in the meeting here this evening. So Tom Stetzer and Kyle Henderson of Strand Associates, and also Sean Ellsrud, our engineering tech, who is managing this project for engineering. And it's sort of, I'll call it three projects at the least, pulled into one because they're similar items of work. But this all started because we need to upgrade our traffic signal equipment. And in doing that, it occurred to us that the pedestrian crosswalks, especially at Century and Allen, are pretty awful. And that's been pointed out more than a couple times. So we thought, let's redo the geometrics there too while we're at it. We started looking at geometrics also then at Century and Q a little bit. We rolled in just a sort of confirmation analysis of the intersection operations at Allen and Lake. And so that was really just to check warrants and what, if anything, should be done or when might it be needed. And then at the last minute, we decided let's add in a separate TIF project, which is to extend the path on the east side of Allen Boulevard from where it kind of ends right now at the Midtown mini mall, all the way north up to Century Avenue. So we can get the path up there instead of just a sidewalk. So there's kind of these four projects that are being one thing, thus the really long title. What we've got in our packets, a layout drawing of the Century and Allen intersection, a layout drawing of Century and Q, the traffic analysis and report for Allen and Lake, and alignment also of the path extension, with opinions of probable construction cost for each. For the most part, I would highlight, I think we're in okay shape fund-wise, except for, I think it was Century Allen that caught my eye, where we're going to need some additional money. This is all in TIF, so I'm imagining between finance and council, that'll be doable. It doesn't affect the capital budget that way. So I'm glad we had those opinions at now. And then the short version of the traffic analysis for the operations at Allen and Lake, I would say, is that someday, if traffic patterns hold and increases continue, there may be justification for considering a traffic signal for the control at Allen and Lake, but not in the near term. And even if it does, there is some concern from the analysis that southbound queues on Allen Boulevard could back up to near Century Avenue, which we would very much want to avoid. So that might be its own difficulty, even in the future. So with that, I'll open it up. I don't know if Kyle or Tom or Sean, if you had any remarks you wanted to make just in a preliminary sense.
Not from my end. I think you did a good job covering it there, Sean, but I am glad to answer any questions people may have.
I can bring up
I think you covered it
response.
pretty well, Sean. If anyone's wondering why there's two gentlemen from Strand hopping on tonight, my name's Tom Stetzer. I work a lot with the TIF team for the city, and have been working with Mark Opitz and Abby Attune on kind of the path planning portion of this. Kyle Henderson works in our transportation group, and so he's leading the intersection and traffic signal component. So we're kind of tag teaming two projects as they merge into one here this winter.
And I guess the only thing that I would add is that these traffic signal updates are part of a larger picture of getting this taken care of prior to the county coming in and resurfacing Century Avenue. So that's a big reason we're kind of piling a lot on in hopes of getting that done prior to.
Good catch. I meant to mention that and completely blanked. So thanks for the save.
I'm impressed with their timing, that it's really has gotten done in, I would think, a timely fashion.
Yeah.
It's
Well, our initial thought was that the county was going to resurface Century Avenue in 2026. That has since moved to 2029. But we wanted to gear up to get this all ready for
bridge is still
26.
done in 2026.
I'm sorry,
The bridge is still going to be done in 2027
2027.
also? Okay.
And we'll have other signals, High Road, Century Avenue. That's another one we'll do prior to the county project. But not next year.
If anyone wanted to
Yeah,
look at anything in detail or offer any comments about pursuit of final design, because this would be for preliminary design, and then they'll pursue final design, getting it ready to bid effectively.
so the multi-use path ultimately will hook up to that right.
Yep.
Okay. And then you've got to go to get across, you go to the traffic island and then across the other way.
Well, and this would be brand new. There is
Yeah,
not now.
there's
an
not now
East
a
Lake
current.
Crossing.
Right.
Exactly.
I think we requested that after
Yeah.
hearing the,
To look into it.
yeah.
Exactly.
Mark,
You might ask. This is the first time I've really looked at this. Is there a way, following up on what Alder Bannon is pointing out, is there a way to adjust it so that there's not such a strong, almost a right angle in the middle of that island? So is there a way to change the angle to tip the road at tip the path on the right turn at the first short leg? Is there a way to tip that so that it's more north-south or northwest-southeast? Is there a way to redesign that a little bit so that it's not?
To start the crosswalk down here,
Yeah.
to lengthen the crosswalk.
Well, but maybe there's a way to tip the, to change the curve so that you're more. I mean, I can,
What's the benefit of that, Mark?
because if you're biking through there and having to make a sharp turn in the middle, that's not
You're-
very good for.
You have to stop,
But
period. You
will there never
can't,
be a-
you can't bike through there. It's not a bike through a corner. It's a stop.
Well, you get a green light. Right?
Maybe.
You
Yeah.
won't have a walk that'll get you all the way through both movements at the same time just because of the phasing
Oh.
of the intersection.
Oh, you'll
So,
never have
I
a
mean-
all green condition for both of them?
So, because say when northbound is going, you can't cross to the pork chop island. And then when the other legs are going, you're gonna not be able to cross across Q itself there, Century Avenue. So I don't think there'll be a specific time when that will be green all the way across through that whole area.
That changes things. Okay. Thank you. That's too bad, but I understand that. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think it would need to be like a scramble ped-only phase to make that.
Well, I'm not opposed to that idea.
Oh, I can name 30,000 other people
I
who
know.
are opposed to it.
Well, are we going to have though, is this a spot where we're going to have a leading pedestrian interval?
I need to get that report in, but I do not think this was a good candidate for that.
Why?
That's why I need the report.
Okay. I mean, it seems like that's a long crosswalk, and whether you're on foot or on a bicycle, it's gonna take a little bit.
Do you
Yeah.
drive that intersection
All
much?
those- Pardon?
Do you drive that intersection?
Oh, yeah.
All
Yeah,
of it? Yeah, I think having an all-way stop would just be it would, traffic queues would just go absolutely
Drive it twice a
ballistic.
day, that's my commute.
Yeah, you'd have mutinies in the corner.
I bet you'd find it different.
Yeah, you'd find a different way, yeah.
Yeah, you'd be
A branch,
increasing,
probably.
yeah,
You'd be
Or no, you actually just go down around the Starbucks and come out that way, coming from the
That's no
eastbound
left
anyway.
turn now during.
You'd be
I
increasing.
know, but you're going right on Allen from Gentry going east. You can easily just skirt it by going to Starbucks. People do that all the time.
Yeah, yeah, they do. And the other thing you'd be doing is increasing traffic on Maywood,
Yeah,
feeding into Allen to bypass the Century Avenue
Yeah.
part.
yeah.
So,
But I think what's really nice is it reroutes the pedestrian crossing from sort of
Yeah, circuitous.
yeah,
this tougher angle and it moves the pedestrians way out in front of the stop bar.
Hmm.
It's gonna sort of right at the stop bar.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, right now what happens is vehicles drive through the pedestrian crossing and take their nose all the way up to Century.
I
Yeah.
expect that might continue, but at least the geometrics of this island and this rerouted curve are much better.
Hmm.
So at least if there is someone crossing the street, they should be more visible. for this.
Added easements required for this shot?
This isn't, see, we've got right of way all the way.
Oh, right away, all of there. Okay, okay. How about you?
Landscape.
Utility relocation, is that going to be an issue? Other than the signal lights?
I check if. this
Other
is-
than the signals, we are gonna do our darndest to miss as much as possible, just because that plays around with construction schedules. I don't see any big hangups for the
Okay,
utilities at this point.
Yeah, it'd usually be like electric, gas, telephone, those kind of folks are at the same depth as us always, so.
For the path component heading south, we will need an easement, a thin kind of strip easement from Harbor Athletic Club. As Sean noted, the right of way is really wide there at the corner, but then as you head south, there's kind of a pinch point in front of Harbor. What Sean has on the screen now, on the very south end of the project, there's plenty of right of way width there. It's pretty straightforward. We're basically just putting the path where the sidewalk is today, matching the back of walkway, the back of path. But then as you get north of Lake Street, where Sean is scrolling now, that's when things get tight with the right of way. And so to have any kind of terrace at all, with keeping a 5-foot minimum terrace, we're still going to need a strip of right of way from Harbor. While with our, one of our goals is just to not impact their parking lot and stay at least a couple feet off of their parking stalls. But as you can see, the right of way is fairly tight to the existing roadway and curb and gutter, so we would need a strip there.
you're going to plan on a barrier then between the bike path and the parking lot of some sort so that cars don't park into the bike path?
Stops on
Yeah.
most, but not all of these.
Not all of them, okay.
And some of the existing bumpers are kind of out of place and things, so at a minimum, down, we would want, fresh parking bumpers installed in every stall. And then likely some signage for no backing into stalls, so that, like a pickup truck couldn't back in and overhang onto the path. It's not an ideal, situation there. It's pretty tight, but we wanted to try to maintain 5 feet for snow storage and some separation from the roadway.
Sure.
What comes to mind, Tom, is at Shorewood, there's a shopping center where there used to be a Dairy Queen. I don't know if the Dairy Queen is still there. Can you picture where that is? The
Yeah,
Tide place, Sabaton?
University Station.
Exactly, University Station. There's almost the same situation where there's a path that's been put in there with the parking stalls facing it. And whatever was done there to protect the path so that the bumpers didn't encroach, it seems to me like it would be a very similar situation here. So can you picture what I mean?
I do, yeah, and
yeah.
there's actually no terrace, there's no separation at all between the path, like the
Right.
path there extends to the back of curb. I think it might just be a little bit of a widened path, maybe 12
Okay.
feet or something. But yeah, there's a 6-inch height, curb through there.
Okay, but I think it's wider and I think they use paint. Anyway, the point is that there's a precedent for a path being against a parking lot like that.
Okay.
And then the crosswalk, I heard someone say that the right turn onto Century, that cars would likely pull into that and block the crosswalk, which doesn't help people using the crosswalk. Might that be a place to use green paint?
Not in a crosswalk, no.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a continuation of the multi-use path,
I think it
Then-
has to be bike only.
Oh, okay. Really?
I will
'Cause I-
reread it, but it says right in.
Well, Madison
MUTC.
clearly ignores that rule.
right, well, and Madison's ignoring it, it's.
I'd
in
rather follow the
Nicholas and-
federal law than Madison,
Yeah.
but it says not in a crosswalk.
Okay,
Period.
okay. Snow been an issue, snow storage along there with the sidewalk right there, Sean? I mean, you got a lot of pavement, you're pushing
It is
snow
all
out.
pavement. I mean, most of this, like Tom said, isn't gonna be worse than it is,
Okay.
but,
Yeah, it's gonna be the same.
in a couple tiny little slivers, we'll have. Well, actually, there's slightly more grass than we do right now.
Because you're gonna be competing with the parking lot snow and the road snow on that little
Right. So
greenway.
here we'd have a little bit less terrace, but it's
Yeah,
really, really close. So it seems to me entirely likely that the county's gonna get some snow on the path, like they do on the sidewalk, and
Mhm.
then the
Yeah.
property owner has to push it onto their own property.
okay. Bike paths are done by the property owners?
Typically, they have been, that's one of those other things that's kind of an oddity in policy is. It seems to me some of what we consider regional paths, we've been doing snow removal. But I can't tell you definitively what constitutes a regional path.
So if this path is gonna be part of the North Mendota connection,
Yeah,
so then the city would plow it.
I'm not saying one way or the other.
Well, it needs to be
Yeah.
sorted out.
yeah, it does. Okay, yeah, so we need to figure out who clears that path. It's probably it should be in the ordinances that we have.
I don't think it's an ordinance.
If we're mandating owner snow removal, then that would be in the ordinance,
Yeah.
but if we're not. then-
Mark would know because
But we've taken on other things that aren't
Just
project
leaks.
units.
Break.
I don't know.
So,
All right,
so any guidance or suggestions for change or concurrence that preliminary looks good and we should move to final?
Looks like you've.
I
used as
just
much
want to
space as
flag
you can
one
there.
thing on the Century Avenue County Highway Keel intersection. And I don't have a great solution for it, and there may not be one, but there is a daycare at the corner of Hedden and Hedden Road and Century Avenue. And just when we're doing the final design, just be mindful of about 4:45 p.m. to about 5:30 p.m. Traffic does tend to really back up at that intersection. So
Which daycare?
Middleton Baby and Child Care Center.
It's kind of at that southeast corner.
Yeah, it won't show up on Google Street View because they the last Google Street View for that intersection was taken before the building was
I've
constructed.
been there one.
Oh, but just I do want to flag that specific time window where we get unusual traffic volumes at that intersection.
Yeah. I don't
At
know
an
that there's
eight in the
gonna be a lot special we
Yeah.
can do about it. But, you know, we'll just have to build it in pieces like anything. When traffic works.
Yeah.
So do you want to do a motion, Pete? So take a move to approve this intersection preliminarily and proceed with final.
I'd be happy enough just rolling it all into one. For
Let's do
all
that
the
then.
preliminary geometrics. For
Yeah.
reconfiguring the two intersections, construction of the path. And to approve the Allen Lake intersection analysis report.
Okay, well, let's go to the Q,
To what?
M and Q. Which is the next intersection.
Yeah, did you want to look at that separately?
Yeah, why not? I mean, we haven't seen it yet. Oh, well, we have, but I mean, it'd be nice to look at it on the big screen.
Sure. This is really good stuff.
Only minimal done there. I can't believe they had to make a bunch of changes.
So, yeah, this is largely taking out this island.
Yeah,
Yeah. Redoing the signals for the most.
and then
Yeah.
making the crosswalk more bike friendly on the
Right.
north side.
Tightens up.
And
Yeah.
I guess I'll just give you a little bit of history for that corner too. So our initial plan was to try to enlarge that island to allow for usage for the bike path through it. But when you start playing around with that, we would push the curb and gutter further to the northeast. And, you know, in that northeast quadrant, it starts dropping away quite quickly down into the apartment community down there. So the impacts are starting to get quite large for trying to maintain a island there. That's why we looked at then, as you see here, kind of pulling in that corner to make it a smaller radius and then manage the crossing that way.
Okay, got it. All right. Then I can make my motion.
All right.
Right. Should I back up?
Yeah, go back to the title of the heading and we can make the motion from there. Nobody made it really,
So something I just wanted to point out to keep in mind, so we're going through and updating our traffic signals. And when we say that, the poles and the lights are staying, but essentially the large boxes that are off to the side in the right of way that hold all the equipment. Those are all of an age that they need to be replaced. Within replacing all of this equipment, currently, when you pull up to an intersection, you have a detectable warning field or a detectable field that's down in the pavement that has a magnetic sensor for when a vehicle is there. You have those at the stop block, and then you have them a distance back. And basically, if traffic backs up and both of those are triggered, the equipment knows that there's a lot of traffic there. That's kind of the old school way of doing it. What we're doing in updating these signals is we're getting rid of those loops that are in the pavement, and we're moving to cameras. So the cameras have the ability to sense traffic, somebody on a bike, somebody walking. So it can do a better job of seeing traffic volume changes. So maybe rather than going from a programmed 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., the signal timing changes, it can do it a little bit more on the fly. We do have a long cross on Century Avenue and Allen north-south. If there was somebody that was walking slower through that, the camera will see that pedestrian and it'll hold that light until that pedestrian is through there. So the future of traffic signals and pedestrians is going to be, I think, a little bit more easier to manage.
Sounds good. Great. Is that camera on Sentry and Frank Lloyd Wright and Permanent? Or Donna?
I don't know
That
if
left
that's
turn lane?
camera detect. We have it on University and Parmenter.
Okay, never mind. All right, I will make the motion to approve preliminary geometrics for the reconfiguration of the Sentry Allen and Sentry Slant County Trunk Highway Q intersections and construction of a 1,200-foot path to replace sidewalk along the east side of Allen Boulevard, south of Century Avenue, and to approve the Allen Slant Lake intersection analysis report.
I'll second that.
And thank you, Sean, for writing that so succinctly and clearly, so one could just read it all.
I usually try to write it so it only takes one breath. But it was
Yeah,
really
but-
pushing the limits.
I think my 50 some odd years of quitting smoking finally caught up with me.
So we have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries on to our next agenda item.
By the way, thank you,
Thank you.
Strandites, for being at the meeting tonight and walking through our bike path and joint meeting. I don't know if they were there, but
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
All right, have a good night.
All right, Orchard Heights street lighting. Dave, this was one of yours, so what brought this
Yeah.
up? Yeah.
I was approached by a constituent family of the Orchid Heights neighborhood. My district 7, and that's also the same neighborhood I happen to live in. And they want street lighting. They stated in their request to me, revolving around safety, kids playing at night, pedestrians, dog walking, pretty much any and all human movement activity during after hours. There are no streetlights in Orchid Heights other than when you enter over by Rolling Hill. I'm sorry, not Rolling, Valley Ridge, where there's some bus stops and things. So it is dark. I've been there now for, I don't know, 18 years, long enough. And you have to have a lamppost in front of your house that automatically turns on, you know, at dusk and off at dawn. And as you can imagine, dating back to the 1968, not all those lampposts work anymore, and not all the neighbors want to keep them functional. Some of the key points the residents pointed out in this process was, and this is why I wanted to bring it to committee for and city simply for history, clarity, and background. They feel that first of all, the residents of Orchid Heights are paying for streetlights for the rest of the city. We probably are in terms of electricity. So granted, there's always an initial uplift cost to have streetlights put in, but after that, we're all paying for the electricity. So people of Orchid Heights are paying for everybody else's streetlights in that sense. They raised that as a 1 point, which I could not answer. So I'm just assuming or guessing.
Yeah, we do.
And
It's operating, but-
okay, it comes out of the operating budget, so that clears that up. And as timing would have it, I was out knocking on a lot of doors this past weekend, approximately anywhere between 20 and 40, as required by law. Good exercise. I could really use it. And so I took that opportunity to do a straw poll.
Yeah.
And so I went through my list and I knocked on 33 households that I could talk to. And I just said to them real simple, hey, what do you think? are you in favor of lighting in the neighborhood or opposed to lighting in the neighborhood? And there's a pretty good chance that if there is lighting installed in the neighborhood, there'd be some kind of assessment on your property, very much like getting anything installed by the city. You know, your taxes will go up. But can't answer any technical questions. This is just all speculative. And what do you think? So out of those 33 households, 10, 15, 18 expressed an interest in yay. And 8 expressed an interest in nay. And 1 said they simply don't care. And I said, okay, well then I'll take a don't care. Don't care would more or less mean yes, or no, doesn't, right. So, so I told the constituents, hey, we'll bring it here, we'll discuss, get a sense of where the city's at, if there is a process, if there, and I gave them kind of a very high level view of it, you know, the city process itself, you know, going through committee and more committee and maybe city engineering time and getting a hold of engineering consultants and design and engineering, and then back to public works. And then once we know how much it costs, then we probably have to let everybody in the area know that, hey, guess what? This is going to cost you money. And they may say no, or they may say yes. So I'm just kind of throwing it out there for some guidance and direction. So I can get back to the constituent and say, well, how far do you want to push this? I mean, if we keep pushing it, it could cost the city staff time and money. I don't know. But then again, that's everybody's job to do those types of things. That's really about it. And what am I missing, Sean? What do you think?
I think those are the big things. You know, initially, when the developer approached the city, the vision was, we're not gonna need streetlights. Everybody's gonna turn on a yard light. And it was written into the covenants that there's no homeowners association anymore, so they don't have to worry about covenants. And some people, I think, are still turning on yard lights. Some haven't the slightest idea how to turn on their yard light. It probably broke down in the last few decades and hasn't been fixed.
I was gonna say, in our neighborhood association, we'll find people if their garage lights don't come on.
Oh. So anyway, yeah, I mean, there is no sort of neighborhood group like that.
That's right.
It's a bunch of homeowners at this point. You know, and some just forgot, some never knew, some can't turn on a yard light without fixing it. So I can understand the impression that, gosh, this is dark. Why doesn't the city do something? Except the city was back then specifically told not to. And then in 1973 and 82 and 13, we were specifically told not to.
Yeah.
So we get asked this question, you know, every now and then, and I suspect it's time for us to be asked again.
It's been 10 years.
The one downside is, you know, getting an estimate out of MG&E might take a while. And who knows what the cost would be, but based on the past, if it's any sort of prologue, you know, we'll get all this information together and then find out the neighborhood doesn't want to do it. We can do that again, but it's difficult for me right now to make that a high priority. That's the downside.
Yeah, I understand. And I did explain this to the constituents. I said, you know, these things take time. And I said, it could take 2 years. I just threw it out there.
I would feel better if there were some sort of neighborhood petition or some sort of documentation that this isn't 3 to 6 people, but this is an actual groundswell of support that, yes, boy, we would love to have street lighting, even if we have to pay for it. Even if they don't know what that figure is and they might back off later, that would be easier for me to justify spending the time to get a new number instead of the old number.
Yeah, so I think
it's not cheap.
Sure, and so I guess what I would say, if that's the position, I guess I'll break it down into 2 pieces. If that's the position the city would take, then I would say one, I'd want the city to, have some stance to take that back to the constituents and say, hey, here's the deal. Two, the Public Works Committee then to sort of weigh in and say, well, okay, that's fair. City's not gonna do anything unless the neighborhood demonstrates a will to want this. Because, we can say to the constituents, hey, if you want this, become a politician overnight and get out and knock on every door in the neighborhood. And do a survey. Maybe draft up your survey before you do it, send it over to the city so the city can look at the language for accuracy. Because we wouldn't want them to knock on a neighbor's door and say, hey, do you want streetlights? Yes or no? And here's the implication, and then misguide that person in the process.
A different way, do you ever send out a newsletter to your folks? Oh, I was hopeful, otherwise it could include a blurb like, hey, if you're interested in this, just drop me a line.
At the risk of sounding really unpopular,
It's my job.
it's a legitimate safety issue to have a residential neighborhood. Functional streetlights.
That's right.
And with all due respect to Alder Lorman's constituents who object to what I'm about to say, I don't think that's a choice they get to make. The choice that was presented in 1968 when we did this was an HOA with a restrictive covenant that these lights would be on, and that was how the neighborhood was going to be lit. Subsequently to that, the HOA was dissolved, and that was a choice that they made. And then in the neighborhood, they made a subsequent choice to no longer light their neighborhood. That's not really a super acceptable way for us as a city or a public works committee to be making decisions about safety at night for pedestrians and cyclists and drivers. So I'd say just go forward, hold a public hearing, assess it, and put the lights in, because that's what we should have done a long time ago.
Oh, and I short circuited what actually happened is during the hearings and discussion of assessments, the neighbors promised to turn their yard lights back on.
Okay, well, that didn't
So the
happen.
neighborhood wouldn't be dark, you see. We just didn't need the expensive way to do it.
I take your point, that's fine. But in my mind, they're still under the guidance that they're gonna turn on their lights. So if they want streetlights, I think we need a petition from the neighborhood to do it. To change their lighting requirements. It's not, because the city is still going by the assumption that they've got their front yard lights on.
Well, only because they told us they would.
Yeah,
not
well,
because
right,
we checked it.
Right, and you
And
have.
we don't have an
Yeah,
ordinance.
yeah. So now if they want streetlights, just get a petition. Just get a petition and then the city can go and get an estimate. Do you have any idea? Concept, is it 2,000 a light, 3,000 a light?
It's the lights is not the expensive part. It's gonna have MG wiring.
Wiring, yeah,
it's the
right,
electricians.
right,
They have to run the whole neighborhood
yeah,
because it just wasn't done up front.
Ah. Yeah, that sounds,
So yeah, the lights are probably in the
Little
ballpark of $3,000, but
Oh.
the wiring is not.
that's probably by the foot.
Oh, it
Well,
is. Luckily, it's
yeah.
not wire like this anymore because of LEDs. It's.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know.
The wiring is smaller.
I don't know what their infrastructure is now. In terms of what they can take off or if they have to run a separate circuit for this. That I don't know, but if they have to run a circuit, they're crossing dry
We're not up to solar streetlights kind of thing yet in our lifetime. Our cities, anybody?
I'm willing to bet someone's doing it. I don't know how.
The city of Madison did that near the VA hospital where I work. They're lighting one of their pedestrian paths with solar lights. I can't remember the price per light. It was pretty expensive, but of course you save on the wiring. So
But then someone's got to monitor battery health. And
right.
so everything's got a trade-off.
Ready for sunny weather.
That's true. It's about cloudy 40 to 60% of the time here. It doesn't help.
Especially when the nights are long.
It's no longer.
Yeah, so we haven't done that.
Hey, Sean, for new neighborhoods like Red Tail Ridge or whatever, is there a requirement for street lighting in those neighborhoods?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why this one neighborhood talked the city out of it. But that was the big vision.
Do you see that changing at all? Because I mean, there's been talks of that dark sky initiative too, where they're trying to reduce lighting in urban areas. But what's your like historical perspective in which direction that's trending in terms of street lighting?
Down lights.
Yeah, we do point them down. We are better at, cutoffs than the old Cobra heads with the big globe on them.
Yeah.
The LEDs are just better than that. But I think too, what we've done for the most part, downtown is an exception, but for the most part, just put lights at intersections and roughly every 300 feet. So it's not in my mind really overlit. In fact, we get about an equal number of complaints that it doesn't have enough lighting or it has too much lighting.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm staying neutral on this. It's my job to represent the constituents, and so I'm really going to take an approach of looking for some guidance, looking for some direction, communicating this back to the constituents. I did take a poll within my own household,
How'd that go? 1 and 1?
go well. But that's good that there's a difference of opinion. And it was kind of neat. I ran into a couple people who lived in that neighborhood since 1968.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
And she said to me, she supported street lighting. And she said, based on where my house is, I know they probably put it in front of my house, which I wouldn't be really happy about.
that's the usual complaint is go.
Yeah.
I mean, because
100 feet away.
because her house is, at an intersection.
Right. Yeah.
But her attitude was, quite matter of fact about it. And I really appreciated that because, they bought the house and had it built. So not too many people like that left in Market Heights, but it was really kind of nice to chit chat and just take that in.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Someone's been there that whole time.
Yeah.
I'd also be pretty open to writing the initial covenant that we had into the city ordinance with this neighborhood, into the city ordinances requiring the property owners to maintain those lights, so we're not installing. It's just feels like
Well,
it feels like we've backdoored ourselves into no man's land, really.
Oh, sure.
We just
Well, we have, but again, they agree to it and they force the issue, and for them to change it, I think we need a petition from over 50% of the constituents in that street.
And one of the constituents did say that they remember, somebody in the neighborhood would go around and put notes at everybody's house and say, hey, your lamppost is not working.
We do that. Sure.
Oh, you do?
We have an ordinance that your alley lights
Do
have
you
to
want
be
to
on
come over?
every night.
Do or
No.
look at heights? What do you?
But I mean,
take
We-
an afternoon.
We've done that.
I'll print it.
Yeah,
You do it.
that's part of the
Amazingly enough,
associations too.
Only 10 homes in the neighborhood built with a switch as opposed to a photo cell.
Yeah, these are photo cells. Mine went out and I had to replace it.
Yeah.
I found it at Menards for about $7.
Yeah,
The thing was, there's no switch in my house to turn the post off.
there is a circuit breaker.
Yeah, but I just didn't touch the wires. I just very carefully use the wire nuts.
If we go fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, you can do anything once, and yeah.
Maybe we do an informational hearing. Give that to your constituent if they want to do that. And that way you get more people from the neighborhood
No,
involved.
3 will show.
Yeah.
I did.
Well, but then if 3 people show up, you know that there's not really that much of a will
Well,
Yeah.
in the neighborhood to get
I
it
told
done.
the constituent, meeting time tonight, multiple times, throughout my correspondence, and I encourage them to show up. It's winter, they're not.
Great. Okay, well,
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you for the input.
If you had a petition, I'm sure Sean would take action.
I'm sorry.
If you had a petition from the neighborhood of over 50% of the constituents, you would then proceed and go ahead with getting numbers.
I think that would be a good indication that there's enough interest to spend the staff time to find out what it would cost.
Yeah.
And even then, if the support vaporized, I wouldn't feel bad having spent the time to look into it.
Right.
But it's gonna take enough time that I would feel like I'm putting other stuff off for
To do it.
this,
Okay.
if only, a handful of people care.
Yeah.
That's,
So basically, if Public Works is recommending that this be put back on the constituent and say, if you want lights in the neighborhood, you have to canvass the neighborhood. And get over 50% of the households to agree to this.
Sign up. A petition.
the idea for a special assessment
Yeah.
project.
Petition the city for a special assessment project,
Yeah.
because it is currently still operating under a homeowners association.
Well, that was what they promised to us.
Yep.
Even though there is no covenant in effect anymore without a homeowners association, they did promise they're gonna turn on their yard lights.
So without an HOA,
We can't make them do it. They just said they would.
so I'm just thinking from their standpoint, there's no HOA. There's no way of enforcing what's there. The city has no ordinance that says Orchid Heights has to be lit.
Nope.
And that's probably the real sticking point. The fact is HOA is irrelevant. It's that the city of Middleton doesn't care whether it's lit or not.
Well, I think we do care, but we don't have a tool to force them to take care of the issue. They promised they were gonna do something. Not everyone knows that promise, to be fair, but maybe if they're reminded, you said you were gonna do this, and frankly, it's gonna be a lot cheaper to do it that way than it is to pay MG&E in the city to come put streetlights in so that you don't have to remember. That's just more expensive. And I think what I see in the history is over and over again, as people get reminded, they make the decision that, okay, yeah, we'll turn on our yard light because I don't feel like paying that bill.
I've never seen cost to it.
Yeah. I haven't generated one lately. That's what I would have to do again, is generate that cost. And again, just because our staff is really, really under the gun, I'd have to put something else off to take this up. And so I'd have to somehow justify that.
I'm not saying you have to do it now or maybe your predecessor, but MG&E can't look at a map. An engineer over there look at a map and say, oh, there's X amount of feet of wiring that would have to be done here, and throw a wild guess out at it.
Maybe they could take a stab.
And then, look at the plan we have and just count the number of poles and say, okay, I mean. if
Well,
it's-
we know where the poles would
Yeah.
go. I mean, we've had that map since 1972, but.
I mean, I think the question is, is something like this cost? I'll just, for discussion's sake, $250,000 or 3 million, or that's what I'm sort of getting at. So if a project like this costs $1.5 million and we're high or low by $250,000 or even $500,000, the thing is, the residents understand that this would cost in the millions of dollars. And this would all be spread out across each home.
Could we
And-
look at something like one of the more recent developments like Red Tail Ridge and get an itemized report of say, how much did it cost to put streetlights into that size of a neighborhood? And then just extrapolate, like this is an approximate cost based on how much it costs to do a similar project in another neighborhood in the city.
Probably not.
Okay.
Mostly because it's different in an existing neighborhood, dealing
Ah,
with trees
okay.
and driveways
fair.
and stuff.
Yep, that's fair.
It-
Is Red Tail doing their own and then turning them over to the city?
No, we buy the light poles
Oh, do
and
you?
we pay MG&E to install them.
Okay, okay.
We use the developer's money to do it.
Yeah.
But that's our contract.
What did that cost roughly? Yeah.
I don't
Are these in the millions?
know. No, I think that's wildly high,
500,000.
but I could see it being $500,000 or something in that ballpark.
And
And
there are
it's piecemeal
145
too.
lots.
It's not done all at once, it's, by.
So
every-
I think still the relative scale is just different. If it would
Yeah.
cost hundreds of dollars to fix a yard light or $1,000 or $10,000 to put a street light in. I'm willing to bet we're gonna get enough people that are gonna say, I'll fix up my yard light again.
So I think the thing is you say to them, look, we're talking about.
I have to go.
Yeah, you have a
Oh,
hard stop at
okay.
8:30.
Sorry.
So,
Okay.
for this, do we want to just defer to the new year? Or,
Yeah. that's-
yeah. All right, and then, Kim, Sean has a hard stop at 8:30.
Yep.
This is a more in-depth, okay, so we'll defer consideration of agenda item 5, liaison appointments, liaison briefings. I have no briefing, Schaffner absent.
No briefing,
No briefing.
no meeting.
Great. Future agenda items. I have none. Brandon,
Nothing from me.
Kim,
No,
Dave,
Nope.
No,
Don.
no.
All right, we have reached the end of our noticed agenda. The meeting is adjourned.
Good night, guys.
they.
Uh,
Says 8:25 on mine. No, it's right.
Yeah.
Now it's working again.
All right.